Alright guys, here to talk about learning skills again. If you find any of the information useful, then please leave a like, a comment, subscribe, whatever it is. And if there's anything you want me to talk about, I'll definitely talk about it, so just let me know in the comments. Anyways guys, today I'm going to talk about how to add new techniques to your skill. Yeah, so techniques, I guess I just basically mean like tools, adding tools to your skill. So if you're doing jujitsu, maybe it's learning a new submission. Hold on, I need a drink. I just did a bunch of push-ups, so I'm a little out of breath. But maybe it's adding a new submission, maybe it's adding a sweep. If you're playing a video game, maybe it's adding a new mechanic, maybe it's learning a new character. You know, if you're programming, maybe it's learning a new function or whatever it is. When it comes to programming, I don't know exactly, but yeah, I'm gonna tell you about how I would go about adding these techniques and these things. So, first up, it takes a long time to add techniques, so you're not going to do it in one day. I mean, you might be able to like use it in the first day, but you're probably not going to be very efficient with it yet. But overall, it's like master these techniques and really add them in and know contextually where they fit into what you're doing. It's going to take a long time. So just like everything in learning, you need to relax and enjoy the process and know that it's going to be a long process, okay? Not something that comes really short and easy. All right, next up. Just know it's not one and done. You're not just going to learn this one time and then implement it and everything's going to be gravy, okay? Again, it's going to be a long process of repeating over and over. And I'm really out of breath, actually. Repeating over and over and continuing to work at it. All right, next up. Another huge thing is when you add any new skill, what actually happens is that your current level you're operating at, you're probably going to drop down below that level. So if you're playing a game with like a leaderboard, you're probably going to drop a couple, maybe a decent bit in the leaderboard. And that's because when you first try to add something new, it's not always effective. I mean, sometimes it is, but usually it takes some time and getting used to and adjusting for it to actually be good and to actually work for you. So in the short term, you may see like a drop in your performance. And I think people don't understand that. So what happens is they try to add something new. And when it doesn't work immediately, they go back to their old way of thinking because it's comfortable and they can get back to where they were. But the problem with that is you're going to be stuck again because you're not adding new techniques. You're not adding new information. So yeah, and these techniques, they have to be adjusted over time and refined constantly over time. Okay. And yeah, you must be in it for the long haul, again, because it's going to take a long time to learn anything. All right. So here's some more important things about actually adding a technique and how I would recommend doing it. So once again, adding any new technique to whatever skill you're learning, it's going to be a process. It's going to take time. So the first step is understand why you're learning that technique, okay? And honestly, sometimes you don't need like an amazing reason. Maybe it's just, this is the most interesting thing to you right now at this time in whatever skill you're doing. And it's just looks cool to you. And that's why you want to try to add it. I mean, I did that in jiu-jitsu all the time. I was like, that looks cool. I want to do that. And those ended up being great techniques for me. Okay. It might also be that like, you know, this is an area you're lacking and you want to develop more in your skill. So that's why you're learning it. But at least understanding why you're learning it and kind of initially what context you're going to be using it for, okay, is kind of important before you start developing a skill. Because if you develop a skill but it's kind of too far away from what you can currently do, or too difficult or not really useful whatsoever to the kind of situations you're getting into with whatever skill you're doing, well, is there really any merit to adding that skill and trying to understand it and apply it? And are you even going to have a chance to apply it? So that's kind of the first step that I would think is like, first argue with yourself or reason with yourself. Is this like a good skill to add or not? Okay. So the second step is going to be the initial learning. So, you know, watch a video about how to do it, go read things about how to do it, get at least an initial dose of information to where you feel somewhat comfortable trying it out. Okay. You don't have to go through and learn every single little thing about it in one go, right? Obviously that's kind of impossible. You need to take your time, okay, learn about it. And I mean, you can learn a lot about it if you want to, but at least just get a very basic understanding of where it is and what you do it. Okay, after that, you're going to apply the skill. So try to use it in like an active situation. Sometimes it may be good to drill with that skill. Okay, I know some people are a big fan of drilling, and I think like drilling can really help if you're trying to get like a high number of reps in, especially if it's like a body movement, like a mind muscle connection type of movement versus like coding or something of that nature. But yeah, so basically what you're gonna do, your initial learning, so understand why you're learning it, do your initial learning phase, gather the information, and then try to apply it, okay? Then apply it for, a reasonable number of time. And again, when you apply it, your skill level is probably gonna drop slightly. So you have to understand that that's gonna happen. And like, you have to be okay with that, right? Because initially it may take some time to actually get used to it before it becomes a really effective skill for you. But it's important not to get emotional and like throw that skill away before it could actually become useful for you. So try to apply it for a little while, whether it's a week or a couple weeks or even a month, depending on what you're doing and how often you're applying it. And then come back and assess. So is this skill working for me? Is this skill something that I think is going to, jive with whatever style I have in my skill? Okay, like what's going wrong with it? What do I think is going right with it? And then once you've kind of assessed the situation and evaluated where you are, go back and learn again and try to clean up those mistakes. So basically I heard like a metaphor once, if you're gonna mow like grass that's really thick, right? You're gonna mow one layer and then another layer, because if you try to mow like one layer all at once, it's gonna be really difficult. The mower won't be able to handle that. So basically your brain can't learn everything in one shot, right? You're gonna have to keep going over and over and learning over and over again and assessing and adding like small bits of information every time until you actually get like a more fundamental understanding of the skill and where it fits and how to do it effectively. So you kind of need to go through this process over and over. So what you're going to do is you're going to initially learn, okay, decide what you want to learn and why you want to learn it. Okay, learn it initially, apply it, assess, learn again, apply it, assess, blah, 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 blah. Down the line, down the line, down the line, down the line. Okay, so that's the basic strategy of what I would do. So yeah, some things to append to this is that, once again, you have to be patient. The main thing when it comes to learning anything is that you need to be patient, even when things don't work out at first. Okay, you're just building yourself up, right? You're building yourself up for those future successes with whatever skill or technique you're learning. But if you're not patient and you rush too much, you're not going to build that like solid knowledge that you need over time. Okay, you're going to build some kind of shaky, building that's not very strong and is easily defeated by somebody that actually has the fundamental knowledge, okay, that they built up slowly over time. Okay, also you need to understand that sometimes not every technique is for you. And even if you practice a technique and it doesn't end up being for you, it's really not sunk cost. So once again, it's not sunk cost, because the fundamental like building blocks of most techniques are actually very similar to one another. So every time you learn a new technique, you're kind of getting better at the fundamental aspects of your skill in general. So when you try to learn a different technique after the first one, you may find that you start understand it even better than you would have if you'd never learned this. So it's not sunk cost. So if you've been doing something for a long time and maybe you initially had success, but then it kind of slowed down and then you realized it wasn't so good for you, and maybe you tried to keep using it, but it didn't really fit into your game anymore, it's okay to remove things as well. Okay, it's not sunk cost. You can remove it. You can always be updating like what you're currently using, right? But the main thing is that you can't just get rid of something because it doesn't work initially, okay? You actually need to try and experiment with it for a little while before you decide whether it's something you want to keep or remove. But either way, it's going to be a useful process. And the last thing is that throughout this whole process, you always need to follow your interest. So if you're learning a technique and it's not really working for you, or if you just really don't have any interest in it, and you like, even just in the initial part, you realize, it's not really something I want to get into right this second, I would recommend following something that you have more interest in, right? Because interest is just like such a huge factor in learning anything at all. If you don't actually have interest in like that particular skill or that particular technique within the skill, it's going to take you twice, 3 times as long to learn it, and probably your results aren't going to be as good. So what you really need is to learn things that you have interest and motivation for, which is why it's important to really go through this initial process of understanding why you're going to learn something, and like, is it actually cool to you? Is it actually look fun to you? So yeah, like what's your reason behind actually going and doing that? So yeah, I hope this gave you some insight on how you can add new techniques to your skill and how I go about like adding more information. And a lot of times the techniques I choose are just what's right on the tip of what I can currently do. So if we think about like jujitsu for an example, maybe you're learning like a sweep, and one thing you could do is hit the sweep, but maybe if they defend the sweep, you can enter the legs or do some other movement. And that's when you might consider, well, maybe I should start getting into leg locks because I'm finding myself in this position a lot where I could enter the legs because they're not allowing me to get this other thing. And so, you know, using situations like that where you're at kind of at the edge of your knowledge base, right? And just adding like the next piece of information, those are really techniques that I would recommend learning before other ones. But you can always go about and head and learn something else if you're really interested in it. Anyways, guys, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment. Definitely please subscribe and leave a like. And if there's anything you want me to talk about in future videos, just let me know and I'll definitely get around to doing that. Anyways, guys, have a great day. See you in the next one.